Welcome to our deep dive. We're taking a look at Quantum Evolution by John Joe McFadden. You sent us this one, right, because you're really interested in how life began, how evolution works, maybe even like consciousness and all that.
Yeah, and this book really digs into that. McFadden has some wild ideas about how quantum mechanics could explain those huge mysteries.
It's pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It is, and he starts off with a pretty basic question, like what even is life? It seems obvious, but is it really?
It makes you think, like, if aliens landed in the Amazon, would they know what they were looking at? I mean, what makes a toucan different from a tree or a rock,
Totally. And McFadden goes back to some old ideas from Aristotle about the motive power of living things, basically what makes them move, grow, use energy, all that.
Right, like those bacteria that live by those deep-sea vents, they use hydrogen sulfide for energy, not sunlight. Crazy, right?
It's like alien life right here on Earth. And they really challenge our ideas of what habitable even means. You'd think they'd need sunshine and all that, but nope, life finds a way.
For sure. Shows how adaptable life is.
Definitely. And McFadden takes it even further, asking if maybe even the simplest things life does, like how a single-celled organism swings towards food, could be affected by those weird rules of quantum mechanics.
Okay, now we're getting into the really interesting stuff, but can we, back up for a sec? For those of us who don't have a physics degree, what is it about quantum mechanics that's so different from the physics we learned in, high school?
Well, think about it. Newtonian physics, that's the classic stuff. It says objects move in ways we can predict, right? Like throw a ball, you can figure out where it's going to land.
Right, seems simple enough.
But in the quantum world, it's way weirder. Particles can be in multiple states at once, and there's this inherent uncertainty.
Oh, like that Schrödinger's cat thing, right? Where the cat's both alive and dead until you look in the box.
Exactly. And McFadden says maybe this quantum weirdness is happening inside living things all the time. We need to start thinking about a quantum cell where those tiny particles like protons are playing by these crazy quantum rules.
Okay, I'm trying to keep up here. So if we zoom way in, down to the molecules, even a simple action like that bacteria swimming, it involves all these chains of cause and effect, right?
Tons of them. Super complex. And if quantum mechanics is affecting those molecules, it could change how we understand, well, pretty much everything about life. From how it began to, how we even think.
Whoa, my brain's doing loop-to-loops now.
It's wild stuff, but it could be the key to unlocking some of those big mysteries.
All right, so how does this all connect to evolution then? Darwin's theory, survival of the fittest, random changes and all that. Where does quantum mechanics fit in?
Right, well, McSadden's not saying Darwin was wrong, but he's adding this whole new layer to it. He says quantum effects could be changing not just how often mutations happen, but maybe even, which mutations happen?
Wait, so instead of just random changes in our DNA, he's saying there might be some quantum force, guiding them.
It's a pretty big idea, and it might explain some of the things that are hard to explain with just Darwin, like how bacteria become resistant to antibiotics so quickly. Maybe it's because of these quantum jumps in their DNA.
So those bacteria in the deep sea, they're not just surviving, they're evolving faster because of quantum mechanics.
That's what he's saying. It makes you wonder if we've been underestimating quantum stuff in biology all along.
This is getting really good. But before we go too far down that road, let's think about another big mystery. Consciousness. If those bacteria might be using quantum stuff, where does our, free will fit in? I mean, if all our actions come down to molecules and those molecules are being affected by quantum things, does that mean we don't have a choice?
That's the million-dollar question, and McFadden dives right into it. He thinks the brain might work kind of like a conscious computer. The brain's electromagnetic field, which is affected by all those quantum events, could be the key to how our thoughts become actions.
Wait, so our brains are using quantum mechanics to create consciousness? Now, that's some next-level stuff.
It is. Raises some big questions. But before we jump into the quantum mind, let's take a quick.
So we're back and ready to dig more into this quantum evolution thing. Before, we were talking about how even the simplest stuff life does could be, influenced by quantum mechanics. Pretty wild, right? But I'm really curious how McFadden applies that to, evolution over millions of years.
Yeah, he really focuses on mutations, those little changes in our DNA that, they're the building blocks of evolution. We tend to think of them as just random mistakes.
Right, like typos.
Exactly, but McFadden's saying, well, maybe quantum mechanics is messing with those typos, could be affecting how often they happen and even maybe what kind of typos they are.
So some mutations might not be random, but more like quantum leaps. Can you, like, walk us through that? How would that even work?
Okay, so imagine you're watching a cell divide under a microscope, like a superpowered microscope.
Hmm.
And as the DNA is copying itself, every little bit has to be copied exactly right.
Makes sense.
But when you zoom in, like way down to the molecules, it's chaos down there. Particles are zipping around, and protons, they're doing this crazy thing called tunneling.
Tunneling, like digging a hole.
Not quite. It's this quantum thing where a particle can pass through a barrier even if it shouldn't have enough energy to do that. Like, imagine trying to roll a ball uphill. Normally, it needs enough oomph to get to the top, right?
Yeah.
But in quantum land, that ball can sometimes just poof, go right through the hill, like a ghost.
Okay, that's a trippy image. But so what does that have to do with my DNA? How does a proton going all ghost-like change anything?
Well, if that proton tunneling happens when DNA is being copied, it can mess up the copying, creates a mutation. And because it's a quantum thing, it could be happening way more than we think if we were just using, like, regular physics.
So because of this quantum quirk, life could be evolving faster and maybe in weirder ways than we thought.
Could be. And remember those bacteria, the ones that evolve resistance to antibiotics so fast?
Yeah, the superbugs.
Right. McFadden's saying maybe that's partly because of proton tunneling in their DNA. Some of them get lucky, get a mutation that helps them survive the antibiotics, and then boom, they pass it on.
So it's like natural selection, but with a quantum boost.
Hmm.
But hold on. If quantum stuff is affecting mutations, wouldn't that make evolution less like more predictable? Does McFadden talk about that?
He does, and this is where it gets really interesting. He's saying that quantum effects might not just be speeding things up, but maybe also kind of nudging those mutations in certain directions. Like some mutations, the ones that are good for the organism, might be more likely to happen because of quantum stuff.
Wow, that's a huge idea. It's like saying evolution isn't just this blind process, but there's some like underlying thing, some quantum force guiding it towards, I don't know, complexity maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we got to be clear, this is still a theory. We need more evidence to say for sure if quantum mechanics is really like steering evolution. But it's a pretty amazing idea, and it could totally change how we think about life itself.
Yeah, this deep dive is definitely living up to its name. We're getting deep here. But okay, we've talked about tiny bacteria. What about us? What about the human brain and like consciousness? Does McFadden think quantum stuff plays a role there too?
Oh, absolutely. He says the brain might work like a conscious computer, where it's using its electromagnetic field, the one that's affected by all those quantum events, to like figure out how our thoughts turn into actions, and maybe even how we experience the world around us.
Okay, now we're going full-on mind-bending here. How does he even start to explain something as complex as, consciousness using quantum mechanics? Okay, so back to this whole consciousness thing. Last we left off, McFadden was saying our brains might be using quantum mechanics to, like, create the feeling of being us.
It's a really interesting idea, but it's definitely caused some arguments among scientists. To get what McFadden's saying, we got to admit that consciousness is, well, it's hard to explain. It's not just about what's happening physically in the brain. It's about, like, the feeling of it, the why it feels like something to be aware.
Yeah, like, it's one thing to know that certain neurons fire when you see the color red,
Yeah.
but it's a whole other thing to actually experience that redness.
Exactly. And that's where those usual explanations fall apart. They can explain how the brain processes stuff, but not why it feels like anything to be that brain. So McSadden's saying maybe it's the brain's electromagnetic field, the one that's made by all those neurons firing that connects the physical stuff to the conscious experience.
Okay, I get that. Neurons firing, making this field around the brain.
Mm-hmm.
But how does that explain consciousness?
That's where the quantum stuff comes in. He's saying that field, the electromagnetic one, it's being affected by all those tiny quantum events happening down at the level of, like, molecules. And because of that, it could be in a superposition of states.
Superposition, like Schrödinger's cat again. Both alive and dead until you look.
Exactly. Our consciousness, our experience, it could be like a bunch of possibilities all at once until something makes it collapse into one specific state.
So, like, our experience is a wave function collapsing into one reality. But what's the observer then? Is it our own consciousness doing the collapsing? Sounds a bit, I don't know, circular.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild thought, and McFadden admits that it gets pretty speculative here. He's basically saying that consciousness itself might be the observer, constantly collapsing those possibilities into the one reality that we experience. It's a big claim, and a lot of people aren't buying it, but it does offer like one possible answer to that whole mind-body problem that's been bugging philosophers for centuries.
Yeah, I can see why some folks would have trouble with that. It's like saying our minds are literally shaping reality. But even if we ignore that part, the idea that quantum mechanics could be involved in consciousness, it's still pretty huge.
Absolutely. Whether McFadden's right or wrong about the details, the fact that we're even thinking about quantum mechanics as an explanation for consciousness, well, it just shows how much we still don't know about the universe and ourselves.
This deep dive has been, well, a trip. We started with what is life and ended up talking about quantum stuff, bacteria evolving, and the mysteries of consciousness. It's kind of crazy to think that those tiny quantum things, happening at such a small scale, could be affecting the biggest questions about life, the universe, everything.
It really makes you think about how connected everything is. The same laws of physics that make those tiny particles do their thing might also explain how life evolved and how our minds work.
To our listener who sent us this book, thanks for sending us down this rabbit hole. Who knows what else is out there waiting to be discovered? Maybe someday we'll look back at these ideas about quantum evolution and consciousness and think, wow, that was just the beginning. Anyway, until next time, keep on exploring.